Hello, how are you? As some of you already know, my name is Tony. I am 28 years old, and I am a co-pilot. In part one of my story, some information was left out, and I know that confused some of you, so let me clarify before moving on. I live in a city a little way from Bogota, and on that particular day, what few people know is that it was going to be my first flight as a co-pilot for that airline. It was my third day officially scheduled with the company, but I hadn't flown yet. I was called at the last minute to replace a co-pilot who had been taken off the flight, so I had to fly to Bogota a day before the flight precisely to meet the crew and attend a pre-flight meeting, where we would go over all the details of the operation. And that was how, completely off script, I saw Captain Edward for the first time. That morning, when we got out of the shower, we were already almost late. Time had passed too quickly, perhaps, because none of us wanted that night to end. We got dressed in a hurry, still laughing discreetly at how chaotic everything seemed, as if the real world had suddenly returned to remind us that we were two professionals on duty. Edward tied his tie with a quick, precise movement. I was still fixing my damp hair with my fingers, trying to maintain my posture while my heart was still beating to the rhythm of the night before. We hurried down to the lobby and went straight to the meeting room right there in the hotel. The team was almost all there, and we exchanged only quick brief glances, too discreet to reveal what was between us. The meeting was to the point. Procedures, division of tasks, schedules, weather, everything was aligned with the efficiency of those who know they will soon be on the air. Shortly thereafter, the company van was already waiting for us at the door. We grabbed our wheeled suitcases and followed, side by side, silent, but with something new between us. Something that neither the well-pressed uniforms nor the technical protocols could hide. The drive to the airport was quiet. We sat side by side in the company van, but didn't exchange a word. Our uniforms were neat, our badges hung around our necks, our wheeled suitcases between the seats. Outside, the city was still slowly waking up in the bright morning light. Despite the silence, there was something pulsing there. Maybe it was the nervousness of the first flight, or maybe it was something else, something that was still fresh on our skin, in our eyes, in our bodies. We arrived at the airport and got out with the crew. Quick greetings, polite smiles. Captain Edward naturally took the lead, as if turning an invisible key. His voice was firm, professional, without a trace of the man who, just a few hours earlier, had shared my pillow. In the operations lounge, we checked in the crew. We picked up the tablets with the flight plans, checked the weather charts, alternative routes, and special procedures. Edward maintained his impeccable posture. I tried to keep up with him. "Everything okay with the weather?" he asked, looking at me casually. "Yes, clear skies all the way to our destination. Just a light crosswind on arrival." "Okay, let's stick with RY-19 on approach then," he replied, already focused on the plan. We proceeded to the aircraft. The heat was starting to rise on the runway. "Do the external check, Tony," he said, as he adjusted the manuals on the console. "Yes, sir. Yes, Captain." I got out of the cabin, performed the mandatory inspection, and returned. As I entered, I closed the door behind me. The cockpit had that familiar smell of a warm dashboard, electronics, and something that always made me feel at home. "Cabin checklist?" I asked. "Let's go." We went through each step together, as if we had been in sync for years. I tried to stay focused, but at times our arms touched as we reached for the same button. Our eyes met briefly in the reflection of the FMC screen. But there was no time for distractions. The chief flight attendant knocked on the cockpit door. "Passengers are on board. We're ready." Edward nodded. "Thanks. Lock the door, please." The sound of the door closing echoed, and in that moment, it was just the two of us there. Alone. In command. He adjusted the microphone, checked the instruments one more time, and looked ahead with the calmness of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. His routine was precise, restrained, and yet, there was something different in the air. Or maybe it was just me. The engine started. The aircraft began to taxi. The radio with the tower sounded like a constant background noise. The runway appeared ahead, like a promise. And even without exchanging a word beyond what was necessary, I knew this flight would be different from all the others in my life. Takeoff was smooth. The sky was clear, the wind steady, and we soon reached cruising altitude. The cabin filled with the constant sound of the engines and the aircraft's automatic warnings. The atmosphere between us was calm, professional, but comfortable. We talked normally, exchanging information about the route, checking data on the panel, making small comments about air traffic or weather conditions in the vicinity. No tension, no slip-ups, at least at first glance. In a moment of silence between transmissions, as I watched the panel and jotted down some information, I felt his gaze on me. I turned my face instinctively. He was looking at me. And then, without saying a word, he discreetly winked. Soon after, a slight smile appeared, small, restrained, almost imperceptible, but enough to make my chest tighten. It wasn't a joke, nor was it carelessness. It was just a gesture. Simple, but loaded with something that only the two of us knew. I looked back at the panel, trying to stay focused. But now, with my breathing a little shorter, and that silence full of unspoken things spreading through the cabin. We arrived at the hotel and went straight to the reception desk. The clerk called us by name, handed us our keys, and wished us a pleasant stay. Everything was quick, automatic. We each received our keys, separate rooms. We grabbed our bags and headed for the elevator. There were already a few people inside, two flight attendants, a company employee, and a man in a suit who wasn't part of our team. We got in without saying a word. We stood side by side, motionless, surrounded by the sound of buttons being pressed and the elevator motor going up. The silence was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was full of what couldn't be said there. At one point, without turning his head, Edward discreetly raised his hand and showed me his room key, resting in his palm, as if sharing a silent code. The tag had the number on it, but he didn't say anything. I understood. I showed him mine too, just raising my hand naturally, almost as if scratching my face. Our eyes met for a second, nothing more. The elevator continued up. Then the light indicated my floor. I took a step forward. "Good night," I murmured, almost without looking back. "Good night," he replied, his voice low and firm. The doors closed behind me. I walked to my room with the key in my hand, and my heart beating at a strange pace, as if something had been left behind between those 2 seconds and that wordless glance. I went in. I closed the door. And only then did I notice the silence. The room was too quiet, with the artificial cold of the air conditioning contrasting with the restlessness that still pulsed beneath my skin. I dropped my bag next to the armchair, slowly took off my uniform, and headed straight for the shower, more in an attempt to calm my body than out of real need. The hot water ran down my shoulders and formed a thick steam around me, but nothing could drown out the memory that insisted on coming back. And it didn't come back little by little. It took over. The image of Edward in the shower next to me was clear. His warm skin, his firm touch, his silent eyes, saying everything he would never put into words. I relived that moment with such intensity that I closed my eyes and leaned my hands against the shower wall. The sound of the water was the same, the heat almost identical. The only thing missing was him. I dried myself slowly, put on a t-shirt and light shorts, but I couldn't lie down, couldn't even think about sleeping. I stood in the middle of the room, staring at the key lying on the nightstand. Then I looked at the clock. It wasn't late yet. I opened the door and walked down the silent hallway, as if my feet knew the way before my head admitted it. My steps were restrained, almost cautious, but inside I was in a hurry, a silent urgency that I no longer tried to hide. I stopped in front of his door, and without thinking much, knocked twice. The doorknob turned slowly, and he appeared. He was shirtless, barefoot, his hair a little messy, with that calm late-night air that only made everything harder to ignore. We stared at each other for a second, and then, with a half-smile, I raised my eyebrows and said in a light tone, "Do you want to eat something?" He held back his smile for a moment, but his eyes gave him away before his mouth did. Depends on what. If it's what I'm thinking, yes, I do. I laughed briefly, almost shyly, and blurted out without thinking, "You bastard." He took a step to the side, making room naturally, as if he had been waiting for me from the beginning. "Come in. I'm hungry." I went in without saying a word. The door closed behind me with a sharp click. And before I could turn around completely, I felt his hands on my waist and his warm body pressing against mine. Without hesitation, he pulled me close and kissed me quickly, firmly, with that muffled intensity that had been throbbing between us for a long time. The mood between us changed so quickly that it seemed inevitable. The kisses intensified at a pace that asked for no permission, just kept going. Our hands found each other's skin with familiarity, as if they already knew the way. There was no time for pretty words, promises, or hesitation. We made love quickly, urgently, as if we had been waiting for it since the moment we first saw each other. That hunger wasn't just physical. It was an accumulation of tension, silence, and exchanged glances over days that were too restrained. And there, between rumpled sheets and rapid breaths, it all came undone with one body pressed against the other. When the rhythm slowed, we lay there for a few minutes, still panting, trying to catch our breath and regain control. Edward looked at me with a smile, ran his hand through his messy hair, and said, as if slowly returning to the real world, "Let's go eat for real now." "Let's go," I replied, laughing softly, with that feeling of lightness that only comes when your body and soul are in the same place. We got dressed in simple clothes and went downstairs together. The night was cool, the city quieter than before, and the hotel restaurant almost empty. We ate slowly, exchanging few words and knowing glances. There was a tranquility there that needed no explanation. Perhaps because what mattered had already been said with our bodies. We returned to the room with calm steps, as if time had surrendered to that improvised peace. Once inside the room, as I took off my t-shirt and threw the key on the dresser, he turned to me with that direct tone that was already his. "Do you want to sleep here with me?" It took me a second to answer, but only because that simple invitation carried a weight that he might not even have known. "Yes, I do." He nodded, but quickly added, more seriously, "But you have to leave early, before the team wakes up. No one can see you here." "Of course," I said, without taking my eyes off his. "Don't worry." We lay down together, and he pulled me slowly, until my body fit into his like last time, as if that had been my place from the beginning. As soon as we lay down, silence filled the room for a few seconds. I was too quiet. He noticed right away. He turned slightly in bed, put his arm around me, and asked in a low voice, almost whispering in the dark, "Is everything okay?" It took me a while to answer. I didn't want to ruin the moment, but I couldn't completely hide it. "Yeah," I said, even though I knew he would sense that it wasn't entirely true. He was silent for a moment, then asked, directly, his face still close to mine, "Was it because of what I said? About no one being able to see you here?" Before I could answer, he continued, in a calm but firm tone, "Tony, you know this situation is complicated. We're not going to give people a reason to talk, okay? Let's take it slow. If we're really meant to be together, if we go public, it'll happen. But at the right time, when we're ready. It doesn't have to be now." After that, he moved closer and kissed me slowly, tenderly. It was as if that kiss said, "I'm here, even if we're still learning how to be together." I nodded, feeling my body relax a little. "Okay, I understand. It's all right," I replied, in a calmer tone, resting my head on his chest. Gradually, the room fell silent again. But this time, it was a lighter silence. As if, even without complete answers, we had found each other in the midst of doubt. After that day, we took a few more trips together. The connection between us only grew, even with the caution we still needed to exercise. The conversations became lighter, the silences more comfortable, and the moments alone, however short, they were said a lot. But after a few weeks, I was transferred to another stopover. The co-pilot who was on leave returned to base, resumed his position, and Edward went back to flying with him. The first time I saw them together again, I confessed that something bothered me. The guy was gorgeous. Tall, friendly, impeccable posture, one of those people who attract attention without much effort. I tried to ignore it, but the discomfort hit me. A knot in my chest, a silly but real doubt, jealousy, insecurity, the fear of being just another short chapter in his life. Edward noticed right away. He called me aside, away from the team, with that direct look he always used when he wanted to pull me out of my own maze. "Everything okay?" he asked, as if he already knew the answer. I forced a smile, trying to hide it. "Yeah, I'm fine." He didn't buy it. "Tony." I sighed, shrugged, and let out a half-laugh, half-confession. "He's cute, isn't he?" Edward laughed softly, shaking his head, and then moved a little closer. "Are you kidding? Are you jealous, Tony?" I was silent for a second. I didn't know whether to answer or pretend. But he didn't wait. "Have you looked in the mirror?" he said seriously, without a trace of irony. "Man, you're beautiful. The most handsome guy I've ever met. Do you really think I would trade you for him? You must be joking. There's no way that would ever happen." My eyes met his, and there, in that moment, all my insecurity began to melt away. "And you think I'm not jealous of you?" he added with a calm smile, but full of truth. That gesture, that simple statement, was all I needed to breathe again. It wasn't just desire, it wasn't just physical. It was care. It was feeling. And in that moment I knew he wasn't going anywhere. And neither was I. We didn't see each other for about a week. Our schedules didn't match, and time seemed to stretch out on purpose, just to test my patience. We talked whenever we could, quick messages between flights, hurried emojis, promises that we'd be together again soon. And even though he said he missed me, that he loved me, I still felt insecure. The fear of distance, of what is experienced in silence, of time passing, all of this weighed more heavily than I would like to admit. But finally the day arrived. We agreed to meet at his house, and as soon as I parked in front, my heart was already racing. He opened the door with a huge smile on his face, and before I could even say anything, he pulled me into a tight hug, one of those that seemed to sew up everything that was left loose during the wait. "Love, I missed you so much," he said, pressing my body against his. "Me too, love. I missed you so much," I replied, closing my eyes for a moment, as if I could keep that hug inside me. We looked closely at each other. And there, without needing anything else, he held my face with both hands and kissed me a slow, deep kiss, full of everything we couldn't put into words that last week. He still tasted the same. So did the calmness he brought. We had lunch together right after, with that lightness that only exists when everything is in its place, laughter, discreet touches, and a reunion vibe that made everything more intense. After we cleared the table, he came back to the living room with a different look, like he was holding news that was too good to keep to himself. "I have a surprise for you," he said, with a smile he could barely contain. "Go on, tell me," I replied, already impatient and curious. "Last week, I requested a transfer so I could fly with you again. And they accepted." For a second, I froze. "Oh my God, are you serious?" "You can believe it, love. Starting with the next stop, we'll be flying together again." Joy overwhelmed me in a way I couldn't contain. Smiling, I approached him and wrapped him in a tight hug, pressing my body against his so hard that I ended up lifting him off the ground. "Love, stop, you're going to knock me over," he said, laughing loudly, holding onto my shoulders. I laughed too, without letting go. "I'm so happy, so truly happy. Flying with you again, it's all I ever wanted." Still in my arms, he kissed me again, this time faster, smiling more, as if he couldn't hold back any more joy. And in that kiss, in the middle of the room, with both our hearts beating fast, I knew it was real. We were back, together, in the air and on the ground. After lunch, and the euphoria of the news, the mood between us calmed down. Now we were on the couch, more relaxed. Our bodies still close, but the silence was different, comfortable, intimate. I was lying with my head on his lap, his fingers slowly playing with my hair, when he broke the silence with a sentence that took me by surprise. "Love, I've been thinking about these days away from you," he said, his voice low but full of meaning. Why don't you move here? I looked up, confused. What do you mean? Here, he continued with a calm smile. The house is so big there's plenty of room. It would be really nice to share this with you. That left me speechless for a moment. I sat down on the sofa, looking into his eyes. Really, love? Are you sure? I'm kind of messy, you know, I joked, trying to hide the emotion that was already rising. He smiled, already anticipating my answer. I'll teach you to be organized. We'll work it out. I want you here with me. Every day. I stared at him, as if I still needed a push, but inside, I had already accepted. And that's how it was agreed. I was going to move in with him. I was going to share not only the space, but the days, the routine, the silences, the breakfasts, and the future. And that's how our story has been so far. Next Monday, we'll fly together again, and as soon as we have some time off, I'll move here. I'm looking forward to this new stage in my life. Or rather, in our life. We haven't known each other for long, it's true, but I'm already sure that we'll be very happy together. I sincerely hope you enjoyed following all this. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Your subscription and support make all the difference. Oh, the link to part 1 is here in the comments, along with the uncut version of this story, for those who want to see everything in more detail. Kisses, and see you soon.